chapter 4, verse 34 of the Qur'an. And the entire challenge, the whole debate, it all hinges on one famously controversial Arabic word. Okay, so the verse lays out this three-step process for a husband dealing with a dispute. First, advice. Second, separate. And then this third step, DaRaBa. Now, right after this procedure, the very next verse calls for bringing in arbitrators from both families. And that's where DaRaBa becomes our puzzle piece that just doesn't seem to fit. Why doesn't it fit? Well, because the common translation of DaRaBa is to strike, and that creates this really jarring jump in logic. How do you go from a physical act, step 3, straight to a calm, formal arbitration process, step 4? It just doesn't seem to follow. There's a logical chasm there. So how in the world do we solve this? Well, the source material we're looking at today proposes a really powerful tool, and it's called the principle of internal coherence. The idea is actually pretty simple. You let the text interpret itself. Basically, internal coherence means we treat the text like it's a self-contained, logical system. To figure out a confusing part, we don't just guess. Instead, we look for patterns in other, clearer parts of the same text. If we can find a consistent, undisputed process for resolving disputes somewhere else, that could be the key to unlocking this whole puzzle. Okay, so let's go looking for a blueprint. The source points us to another case of marital dispute in the Qur'an, this time in chapter 58. And this one is crystal clear. It gives us a solid pattern to work with. So in this situation, you have a woman who's stuck in a total marital deadlock. Her husband has left her in limbo, but instead of just staying stuck, she escalates. When her private attempts to fix things have clearly failed, what does she do? She takes her case to a higher authority. You see the procedure here? It's simple and it makes perfect sense. 1. There's a problem that's reached a deadlock. 2. One party presents the case to an authority. 3. The authority steps in. This 3-step process is our blueprint. Now let's see if this pattern pops up anywhere else. And what do you know? This pattern isn't a one-off. In a different passage, we see a parallel situation, this time initiated from the wife's perspective, even before things get to a complete standstill. This verse is interesting. It shows that if a wife fears a problem is on the horizon, the very first step is private. You try to make settlement between yourselves. You try to work it out. Okay, but what if that fails? What if she tries to reconcile and she ends up in that same suspended state we just saw? Well, our blueprint from that other example tells us exactly what the next logical step is. You take it to an authority. So when you put these two passages together, a really clear procedure for the wife emerges, and look at that. It perfectly matches our blueprint. She fears a problem, she tries to reconcile, and if that fails, she escalates. The pattern is consistent. This is a big deal. All right, now we have our key, this idea of internal coherence, and we have our blueprint for how disputes are handled. So now finally we can go back to that original puzzle in verse 434 and see if we can make that tricky piece fit. Let's lay out the husband's procedure one more time. He advises, then he separates, then comes our mystery step, the big question mark, DaRaBa. And right after that, boom, formal arbitration. There is a clear missing link between those private actions and the public process. So here's the proposed solution. The word DaRaBa actually has multiple meanings in Arabic. Context is everything. And based on the pattern we've just uncovered, what if it means something like to present the case or to put forth the matter to an authority? I mean, that is the exact same step the wife takes when her own attempts at reconciliation fail. And with this one interpretation, everything just clicks into place. If DaRaBa means present the case, the sequence becomes perfectly logical. You advise, you separate, and if those private attempts don't work, you bring the matter forward for formal arbitration. The logical gap is closed. The puzzle piece fits. Okay, now let's zoom out, because with this reading, we don't just solve one little puzzle in one verse. We actually reveal a complete, coherent, and beautifully symmetrical system for resolving marital disputes laid out in the text. Just look at this. It's a perfect structural match. Both the husband and the wife follow the exact same logical path. It starts with a concern, it moves to private reconciliation, and if that doesn't work, they both have the same next step: escalate to a formal process. It's a mirror image. So what does this one shift in meaning really accomplish? Well, it creates a seamless flow from private to public resolution. It forges that missing logical link. It establishes a consistent and fair system for both spouses. And maybe most importantly, it gets rid of the internal contradiction, making the text coherent with itself.